There is nothing worse than untapped potentials. If you know that you're made for more, this is the place. I know that every successful person I've ever met has one thing in common. They do not let themselves fall victim to their circumstances. They figure out a way to rise above it. So join me on this journey where I help you to be better, do better, and have better in life and in business. If you're feeling stuck and you're needing some practical tools, some hope to get you to that better life, this is definitely the place for you. Hey everyone, welcome to the Unstuck Podcast. I'm your host, lachellewieme, and today I get a chance to interview coach, speaker, and trainer Ann Visser. You guys, she is an amazing fellow John Maxwell coach. She has so much just brilliant advice and inspiration for all of us when it comes to ourselves, our relationships, and all the things. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I cannot wait to learn from you and your beautiful heart for service. So thank you for being here.
Well, hello, Lachelle, and thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here on the Unstuck podcast to share my story and the hope that I carry in my heart with me for women and for relationships.
I love that so much. And would you be able to describe a little bit more in detail than I've given on exactly what you do to help people, how you serve people, and what you're most passionate about these days?
I, for the most part, work with women. I believe that every woman will face circumstances that will create emotional distance in her marriage, and it will cause her to feel lonely and unhappy and afraid because we don't want to join the statistics. We don't want to be another casualty in divorce. And so we get that sense of, oh, I don't know who you are anymore. And so, my friend calls it creeping separateness. I work with women who are struggling with that creeping separateness in their marriage. They don't like it, they don't want it, and they want something better. And the good news is that when a woman has already experienced what it's like to feel loved and cherished and secure, she can get back to that again. She can get back to that happy marriage again. And so I help women who are working on themselves. I believe that one can make a difference. I believe that working with one woman, I have seen women working on themselves and working on their marriage make a difference in their marriage, because when she changes the steps in the dance of marriage, it changes her marriage. And so it's my great privilege to work one-on-one with women. And I also have a membership for Christian women. It's called the Sisterhood Journey. We meet every Tuesday night and we work on our personal growth. And Lachelle, you'll be familiar with this. We're starting intentional living next Tuesday night.
That's awesome. I love that so much. And I just have to say that there's so much to be said from what you just mentioned. The first thing is that I've noticed that first of all, we're a tribe here of people who want to be better, do better, and have better, right? And that's what it's all about, is that when we are better ourselves, we can do better in our lives, in our marriage, we can have better relationships. And so those are kind of our tribe of people here in the Unstuck podcast, which I love. And the other thing that I've noticed is that people that really want that better, it really starts with the first step, which is desire, and having that awareness of the desire of better, right? Like, I just don't want things to be like this. Even before they get really bad, you start to recognize, like, hey, things just aren't quite the way that they were. And I love that you were able to acknowledge the fact that if you felt that way before, you can get back to that, because I think that that seems like such a tall order for so many people who have felt like things have been gone astray or are off track for a while. And so thanks for bringing us back to the place of hope, right? Because I think that's the first step in anything, is recognizing that it is possible.
It is
Right?
possible. And it's such an empowering place to be. It's an empowering place to be because the very same things that helped us to fall in love in the first place, the time that we spent together, the conversations that we had, or maybe we didn't have, the way that we connected, because not all couples connect in the same way. And so the way that we connected, we can figure out how did that happen, and we can get back to that happy marriage again. I believe that there are circumstances that kind of tear us apart, whether it's having a new baby, or whether it's retirement, or whether it's a job loss, or perhaps a woman has experienced some physical change in her body, and it creates this emotional distance.
Yeah.
We want to get back to that to that closeness that we once
Yeah.
experienced and that we know is possible.
Oh my
We want to
goodness.
get back
You
to that
you
place.
you brought something up that was so powerful too, is that there's so many reasons that we can have a divide in the most sacred relationship that we have here on earth, right? And it can be a physical thing, such as like a body change, pregnancy, hormones, late menopause. It can be things that have to do with our minds. So many times people are on a trajectory or where one of the couple is growing and the other one isn't. So it's an intellectual thing. Sometimes it's a spiritual thing. And just recognizing that there's no shame, I guess, in any of them that are bringing this division in your life in this little bit of a rut that you might be in, because there's so many reasons that the enemy can really try to bring those divisions in. And so just to recognize that there's nothing wrong with you, is just the awareness of it and the hope for better that's important, right?
Absolutely. I want to bring us back, Lachelle, to body image. And
Yeah.
I don't actually talk a lot about body image, but I remember standing in front of the mirror. I was shopping for new clothes. My clothes didn't fit anymore. I had gained 40 pounds of my first baby, and I was ashamed.
Mm,
But my husband, he wasn't. He loved what he saw, but I rejected
yeah.
his words of, that he loved what he saw because I couldn't see it anymore because my body had changed so much. And it took me years. I don't want it to take women years to get back to that place of loving themselves so that they can truly give themselves to
Yes.
their husbands or to their partner. That creeping separateness when we don't accept ourselves, when we
Mhm.
don't know, like, love ourselves, and when
Yeah.
we can't vulnerably open up to
Yes.
our husbands in that way. And that creates an emotional space all on its own.
Oh my gosh, you just brought this like really in-depth aha moment for me, because I think that so oftentimes we want to fix things with the other person, right? But you just brought up a really good point, because I think my husband would be the same way. He loves my body more than I love my body sometimes, right? And so even if your other person is able to fix you, you can't fix anything until you fix you yourself, right? And that means also you can do a two-way street, because if something is wrong, you can't fix them either, right? And so it really just starts with ourselves and what we can do to help make ourselves whole and loved, and in order for us to truly love and accept from other people.
Michelle, my husband just said to me the other night, I love your confidence. That's the opposite of not loving my body.
Yeah.
It's the confidence that we can gain, so that we are okay with who we are and we
Mhm.
just bring it all into the
Yeah.
relationship.
So, Anne, I'm just going to ask you, what made you decide to get into this line of work, and take us through your own journey so that we can really relate to you and your passion for this.
I do what I do because of where I've come from. I know what it feels like to have no hope in relationship. In fact, um, my husband and I, we got to this place where we just did not, we felt so much separateness in our marriage that I said to him, I can't do this anymore. But we didn't start out that way. I married my high school sweetheart. I met him one summer when I literally couldn't outrun him. Caught me and threw me in the water. That was the first time I met him.
I love it.
Well, he was in leadership positions on the school board, and this was really attractive to me. And so that year I chased him shamelessly. I just wanted a date. I was head over heels for this guy. And so I was writing him notes and leaving them in his desk, and he started to write back. 2 years later, we married. And I still remember the photographer saying to us, he said this, Lachelle, he said, I've never seen a couple look at each other the way the two of you look at each other. Oh, we were crazy in love. We really were. We really were. And but then it was life circumstances that kind of caught up to us.
Mhm.
My husband, Melis, that's a good Dutch name. He was new to farming and he had come home on the family farm and he was learning from his dad. Now, there were many challenges in farming, but there were also challenges within that relationship with his dad. And he often came home frustrated from work. And my first thought was, as a young married mom, what did I do?
Mhm.
And it had nothing to do with me.
Right.
And then in the meantime, I got pregnant the first month after we were married. I was very sick. I spent that first 9 months on the couch.
Oh,
And it was a tough way to start marriage. And then fast forward 5 kids in 6 years.
oh my goodness.
I know, crazy, right?
That would be enough for anyone to have their own stress and struggles.
It was so busy. It was so crazy with kids and farm life. We started drifting apart.
Mm,
And I was becoming more and more critical and resentful because I was feeling lonely in my
yeah.
marriage. And I resented his work. And honestly, I resented every little thing about him. And then on one particular night, we were on a date, and we were sitting in our farm truck outside our favorite restaurant. And I said to my husband, I said, I can't do this anymore. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean you can't do this anymore? And I said, I can't do marriage like this anymore. We just keep hurting each other over and over again. We go around and around the same old thing. And I'm so tired and I'm so hurt. You know, he really heard my heart that night. And then for the first time in a long time, he shared his heart with me. And I hadn't even seen his pain because I had been so wrapped up in my own pain, so wrapped up in the children, so wrapped up in home life that I
Right.
had missed his pain. But that night we recommitted to each other that we would get the help that we needed to get in order to get better, to close that emotional distance that had crept into our marriage. And so I'm here today because of that very pivotal conversation. From that moment on, we started studying each other and we started studying marriage. And we've discovered some of the secrets to marriage. And I share those with my clients, these secrets that we've found and discovered. You know, one of them is if what you're doing isn't working, try something different.
Right.
You know, if what you're doing isn't working, then try something different. How crazy is that? But how often do we just go around the same old thing? We keep going and going, doing the same thing. And I have a lot of women that come to me and they said, I've tried everything. Nothing's working. He's
Yeah.
not listening to me. But when I learn more about what she's doing, you know, it turns out that what she's doing is she's doing a lot of talking
Mhm.
and talking and talking some more, because, you know, that's what she thinks communication is all about. But what she hasn't tried is maybe listening
Yeah.
or being quiet or saying really concisely what she really needs. These are lessons I had to learn, Lachelle. I was such a poor communicator. We were both poor communicators. We were so young, so immature. I needed to grow up. He needed to grow up. And so we needed to start doing something differently to disrupt what was, you know, it's not working, right? And doing something different disrupts what is not working so that we can then begin to form new habits, break those old habits, but then form new, healthy relationship habits,
Yeah.
communication and conflict resolution habits that help us to close that emotional gap
Yeah.
and grow closer together and stronger together.
You know, one thing that you said I think is worth mentioning is that even though you guys had 5 kids that were very young and he was busy on the farm, and I can relate to this. And I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you or not, but I grew up, my mom got married when she was 20, had me by the time she was 21, 3 kids by the time she was 25. So not, you know, terribly different than you minus a couple kids. But my dad, you know, admits now as we're grown adults that he was overwhelmed by all the stuff that was going on in the house, that he was farmed with my grandpa. He purposely, you know, got himself into work so that he wouldn't have to deal with all the chaos in the house. And my mom, as a young woman, was literally left by herself on the farm in the middle of nowhere with these little kids. And I was born in December. My sister was born in December. So, you know, it's Minnesota, it's winter, it's dark, it's lonely. I can't imagine. And it's so fun because I see my parents now, all these years later, and they are so in love, but I didn't see that growing up. And so I think that, you know, your story, seeing my own parents brings us so much hope. But one of the things that stood out to me about your story is that you guys went on a date. Now, I don't remember my mom and dad ever going on a date. And I think that that was really pivotal because if you don't make that a priority, it doesn't happen. So tell me about that. Was that something that was a regular thing for you guys back then? Or was it something that you kind of made a decision to do something differently that night?
We had very regular dates because we needed some space for the two of us to get alone, to have some conversation, to have some fun. I think that fun is really underrated in marriage. I think
Yeah.
it's important to be playful and to have fun together. I
Mhm.
think it's important to laugh together. I think it's important to laugh at ourselves. I
Yeah.
think it's a part of our family story and
Mhm.
it becomes a part of the family memories. And in fact, I remember my mom and dad having many conversations about the same thing, but they were funny stories they told over and over and over again that became a really important part of our family culture.
Yeah.
And so those family dates were, or those couple dates were
Yeah.
really important to us. We also, this is kind of funny, Lachelle. So, where can you go that the kids cannot follow you? Well, the bathroom. So we called the bathroom our office, and I would say to him, "We need to talk. Come into the office."
I love it. I love it. That's great. And I think that one of the things that I want to point out to our listeners also is that, you guys, I think sometimes we think that we're doing everything that we can. And just like Anne mentioned, that you think you're doing something different, but maybe that there's something more that you have to learn because what she is saying is that even though they, had this crazy busy life, they still made it a priority to have dates and they still were in that place where I can't do this anymore. And so it was really just that awareness of even though you were already doing something to try to help, right? It wasn't enough. You needed to shake things up a little bit. And so I just think that I love this. I can't wait to continue our conversation, Anne, because I want to really get into more of the hope and but more even importantly some practical tools that people can start to initiate literally today that's going to help them reunite with their spouse so that they can live out the life that they intended to when they said I do, right?
Mhm. Can I start with one of the
Yes.
strategies I
You
love to
know what?
share?
Yes. And so why don't you guys give me just a second? I'm going to tell you all about this really important thing that I've been working on. You guys, I literally cannot wait. It has been something that I've been working on for a while with my team, and we are so stinking excited. So hang tight. Let me introduce this to you, and then we're going to be back with Anne's amazing tips in just a second. Hey, Lachelle here. And I just got to ask you, do you ever listen to podcasts or special training from gurus who are telling you exactly what to do, but you still have questions? Wouldn't it be amazing if you actually could ask questions to the people who are presenting to give you your personalized answer to how you can get into action and apply it to your unique situation? That is exactly why I created the Better Club Elite, which is a very special, very exclusive monthly membership that gives you access to those question and answer sessions that are going to get you into action and get you all lined up with everything that you need to start being better, doing better, and having better in life and in business. The support, the answers, and everything that you need to get you into action. So let's go. And let's get started. Why don't you start to tell us all about the things that we can start implementing today that is going to help take us from where we are to where we want to be?
I want to give you two strategies that were really important for us. And the first strategy is to start being curious about your partner again, to start being curious about each other. Now, you may wonder what does curiosity have to do with communication? What does curiosity have to do with conflict? But when we're curious, we stop making assumptions.
Mm.
And women can be the queen of assumptions. I know I certainly can. I can think that I know what's best for him, that
Yeah.
I know what's best for our marriage. In fact, Gary Smalley says that women have a marriage manual in their heads. But that can come from the assumptions that we make to our partner. So, but do you remember when you first fell in love, Lachelle?
I do. Yeah, I was a high school sweetheart with my husband too. I was 17. So we've grown up together for sure. And yeah, like being curious, getting to know them, wanting to ask the questions, wanting to get inside of their head so that you can give them what they love, and really just being in constant wonder of how you can do that, or what they're about, or how they grew up. All of those things. I've never even thought about that. You're completely right. That was something that was different back then compared to now.
Okay, I love that word that you just used, a state of wonder.
Yeah.
I remember we had a wall phone. I'm just dating
Same.
myself here.
Same.
And it was a business line. My parents ran a business from home, and they were forever trying to get me off that phone. But I was in a constant state of wonder, like, just one more thing. Oh, just one more thing. I just have to tell you one more thing. Oh, I just want to hear one more thing, right? Just that curiosity, that state of wonder. It's because knowing is one of the very important links in love. And that knowing is so important. It never ends. I've discovered that even now during COVID, I'm learning new things about my husband that I didn't know before, because he has been home a lot more than he used to be. And so I am learning that he loves to rest. He has now a man cave, a workshop that he's working on. And he comes back from there and he says, that's like therapy. I've never seen that in him before. That sense of knowing never ends. We never top it up. And so to continue to be in that state of curiosity. So instead of making assumptions,
Mhm.
I know what you're thinking, I know what you need. It's to consider asking,
Yeah.
what is it that you need from me today? You're having a bad day. I see it. Like, what is it that you need?
Yeah.
And then it's to listen deeply to our partner. And it may surprise you. I know it has surprised me about what he truly needs.
Mhm.
Just recently, we're facing a crisis in farming here. And I said to him, I was assuming he needed to talk. I'm the expert, but I'm still learning. And I was
Right.
assuming he needed to talk and we needed to talk. And he said to me, I just need you to pray for me. I was like,
Mm.
oh, and how easy is it when they tell us what they need, and
Right.
then we can just follow through on that
Yes.
and give them what they
I know.
need.
I mean, oftentimes I think I'm guilty of this. This is going to embarrass me, but I'm like, I basically tell him what he needs instead of listening to what he needs. And it's so funny because one thing I wanted to ask you when it comes to listening is something that I've experienced myself. You're a John Maxwell person, so you understand the DISC assessment, I'm guessing. And so you guys out there, it's a personality assessment. And so I'm an I and a D. So I'm very just more direct. I am like high energy. I am okay, let's talk this out and fix this like yesterday. My husband is an S. So he is all about stability. He likes to process things. He likes to take his time. He likes to think about it. And so when we're in an argument, I'm just kind of like, all right, let's go, let's talk. And he's just like, and so then he doesn't answer me right away. So then I get impatient. And so my brain starts making up all these stories. So that's me being vulnerable with you guys. But, and what would you say to help me to be more patient with him and let him process things the way that his beautiful brain has been made, instead of making it all about the way that my brain is made?
I think there's so much value in understanding, just in knowing that, first of all, Lachelle, that he is different, and then in valuing that difference in him. And I have had to learn to pause.
Yeah.
I'm much quicker at processing, especially emotional information.
Mhm.
And I've had to learn the value of pausing to let him speak, because I've discovered that when I interrupt him, even in his thinking, he loses his train of thought. And it's too valuable to miss. I need that in my life. I
Yeah.
need that in our marriage. And so I have had to learn to hold my tongue. Sometimes I picture what one of our mentors, Chris Robinson, says when he
Yeah.
talks about how he was training salespeople. He
Yeah.
would ask a question. He would teach his people to ask a question, push the mute button, so he couldn't talk.
Yep. Yep.
And sometimes I picture that in my head.
Yeah.
Ask the question. No, 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 mute. No, wait.
That's such a great picture, though, in our brains, right? Is to literally imagine ourselves hitting that mute button. And what would you say is one of the things that I found too with myself is that because I know this about my personality and I know this about him, I'm trying harder to respect the time that he needs to process, but I still want to value and respect the time that I need to fix it. And so how do you establish, clear and realistic boundaries around, how long to allow time to process things before you can say, honey, like, is that something that you try to say up ahead of time? Like, hey, tell me what your thoughts are on that. Does that make any sense? I'm not articulating things really well.
No, that makes perfect sense, Lachelle. You have an urgency to solve the problem and to
Yep.
fix the problem, and he has a desire, a need to process
Yes.
through what he's thinking, what he's feeling, and what he really wants before
Yes.
he can even communicate that to you.
Right.
It can't come out of his mouth until he knows
Right.
himself.
Yeah.
And so I like to make a date. It's not a go out on a date. It's a, okay, can we talk about this tomorrow?
Mhm.
And in our relationship, though, it would be more often my husband who would say to me, I need to talk about this now.
Okay.
And I am slow processor. And so I really need some time. And so I have learned to say to him,
Yeah.
I need some time to think about this. Can we talk about it tomorrow?
Perfect.
And when I am weak on that, he will say to me, I want to talk about this. Can we talk about it tomorrow? So we know there's a deadline.
Mhm.
It helps me relax and think and process because I
Yeah.
know I have some time, but it also helps him to relax because he knows we are going to talk about
Yes,
this.
I
We
love
are,
that. Very
yeah.
simple, you guys. So I mean, I hope that this helps somebody else. But when you have God brings us together, he's a balancer for me. Like I'm so grateful that he paired us together because there's so much good that he has done in my life. But I also know that sometimes it can be frustrating. And so I thank you, and for that, and to really bring back that message of being curious and having that curiosity and active listening is so important. So when we a lot of times in coaching, I hear people say that I have such a hard time with coaching because I ask these powerful questions and I'm constantly thinking about what the next powerful question I want to ask. When really, if we can just be curious and wait for the answer, we get out of our heads to think about the next question and the next thing we want to say. We're just in complete wonder of what they're going to say. And so I think that curiosity can be such a gift for all of us in so many different ways. So thank you for bringing that up.
If I can just share with you for a minute, Lachelle, I was on a call with a pastor friend. I needed some help. And I said, oh, you are such a good coach because he listened so deeply to what I was saying. He asked so many good questions I hadn't asked myself. He helped me think through my problem, my challenge, so that I could find a way forward. And that really is what coaching is all about. And when we can do that for our marriages, for our partner, for our children, it is so incredibly huge to stay in that place of curiosity.
I love it.
I would love to share another strategy with you,
Yes, let's do
Michelle.
it. Let's do it.
Okay, it's one important strategy that we have learned we need to do is to keep short accounts, and it's really important because conflict can drive us apart and can create that separateness. When we first married, both of us were conflict avoidant.
Yep.
Neither of us wanted to fight. And it was one of the first most important marriage lessons we learned was to value conflict and to see it not as the enemy, but as a friend.
Yeah.
And we learned this from Gary Smalley from his Love Making Love Last Forever. He said that conflict is the doorway to intimacy.
Hmm.
And he encouraged us to think about intimacy as into me you see.
Ooh, I like that.
And so, like, when I first heard that, I thought, I don't want to fight. Don't make me fight.
Yeah.
But when I experienced what it feels like to enter into a conflict and to be heard, it gave me more encouragement to not be afraid of conflict, but to keep those short accounts. And so short accounts are about making a repair faster, repairing the tension so the tension doesn't linger on and on and on. We used to disagree for weeks. It was awful, Shell, because we let it go. We didn't deal with it. And we learned we needed to deal with it sooner so that it wouldn't create that separateness between us. And we learned that we needed to work through our issues more thoroughly instead of kind of putting a band-aid on it. And when we conflict well, then we can go deeper into what we're really thinking, what we're really feeling, and what we really need. And by the way, that's the really deep levels of communication. When I can share with my partner and with Melis, this is how I'm feeling, and this is what I really need. It's the deep levels of communication. And I think we avoid it because it causes us to feel really, really vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Because if I share with him what I need, I just need a hug right now.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do that for me. I feel that pain.
Right. Right.
But therein is the risk. And Brene Brown talks a lot about the risk of vulnerability. Therein is the risk, but therein is the beauty. Because when he does come and give me a hug, I feel loved.
Yes. And we have to teach people, right, guys? Because I think that sometimes we expect our partners to be psychic and we expect them to know exactly what we need or what we're thinking at all times. And then when they don't, we have these expectations and they fall short, then we can feel rejected, hurt, resentful, and all of the things. And so sometimes, I've heard people, and I've been guilty of this myself, where like, I don't want to have to tell you that I need a hug. And it takes the sweetness of the hug away. But we have to teach them, what it is that we need too, right?
Absolutely. If we don't share what we need, they don't know and they can't give it to us then.
Yeah.
And so we need to be able to share. And by the way, I remember when I was standing in the kitchen and the first time I said to him, I just need a hug right now. And he came over and gave me a hug. And I thought, wow, that was really easy. Why didn't I think of this before?
Right. And when you say keep short accounts, tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that, in the sense of, are you saying that you are wanting us to bring things up to the surface sooner than letting them kind of fester and build up until it explodes? Or tell me a little bit more, I guess, about what you mean by short accounts.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because when we have a little issue, it's a little irritant. It's
Yes.
not such a big deal. And I say to our couples, it's not if you run into trouble, it's when you run into trouble.
Yeah.
So go for help sooner. Fix that small attitude, make that attitude adjustment sooner than later. Deal with that small problem before it becomes an insurmountable issue because it has lasted for 3 years and you haven't talked about it. And then what happens is, according to Dr. John Van Epp, those small irritants, they actually become big irritants.
Right.
And they move to the front of the stage in our minds and they become insurmountable, big. That becomes all that we can see are all the ways that they are wrong and all the things that they do wrong. I was in that place. I remember the day that Melis brought me home flowers. It was for no particular reason. And I thought, what does he want from me now? Like, oh my word. Yeah. It's like you look behind you to, like, where did that thought come from?
Right.
Oh, and I recognized I had a problem because he could do the sweetest, kindest thing for me. And I suspected his motives.
Yeah.
That's contempt.
Right. Right.
That's contempt. Like, I am better than you are. And I had become a right fighter. And my focus had been on what he was doing wrong because I had let this little attitude become something much bigger. 100%. That's when we move into, and according to John Gottman, contempt is one of the horsemen and it's to be avoided at all costs.
Well, yeah, because I mean, when we get into the victim mentality, we're going to look for other things in our lives as proof that we're a victim, right? Yeah. And it's just like the red car example. If I tell you to find a red car on the highway, you're going to see them everywhere. Whereas yesterday you didn't. And so when you're finding ways to justify the way that you feel, you're going to find it 100%, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then our focus becomes on that red car, or our focus becomes on everything that they're doing wrong. And that's where I was. Yeah. I'm a person of faith, Lachelle. I started to pray and I said, Lord, I need help here. I recognized I have a problem. And I felt God was saying, write out everything good about the man. And so I took a piece of paper I was kind of resistant. So it was a little Post-it note.
So a big long list is what you're saying. I love it.
And I started to write out, I was in a bad place. But I started to write out everything that was good about him. And I took that Post-it note and I put it in a place where I would see it every day. He didn't, but I did. I read it every day for about a month, and I didn't notice any change at first. But then after about a month, he called home and he was kind of cranky and he said, I'm going to be late for dinner. And he hung up the phone, and he never does that. He doesn't hang up the phone without saying goodbye.
Yeah.
And I hung up the phone and I thought, boy, you are having a really bad day. And
Wow.
then I smiled to myself because I recognized I had changed my focusing on
Yes.
what was good about him had changed my attitude toward him. And because focus determines attitude and our mindset toward our partner. And that's a really great, short, easy exercise and
Yes.
tool to change your focus towards your partner.
I love that. I'm going to just ask you one quick question because I could literally talk to you all day, obviously, and you're just such a blessing. But I want to ask you one more question about the when you have something that's bothering you so that you don't build up this resentment and contempt. How do you discern whether or not it's something that you do need to voice, or if it's something that you just need to recognize within you? Like, hey, Lachelle, you're being a little brat. Like, maybe you need to process this a little bit better before you go and tell him what he needs to do, that what he's doing wrong, versus like, hey, honey, this really hurt me. How do you discern whether or not it's time to voice this thing, or to recognize that it's something that you have to fix within yourself?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I think it's always important. I have to deal with me first,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Or else, even if the conversation is valid and it is his problem, more as opposed to mine, right? I still need to deal with my own attitude so that the conversation comes off well.
Mhm.
I do a journaling exercise. What am I feeling? What
Okay.
am I thinking? And what do I really want? It sets my headspace in a place where I can come to him very clearly and concisely. When this happens, I feel this way.
Mhm.
And this is what I think about it, but this is what I really want. And typically, what I really want is connection with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
then I can say that to him. I remember saying to him when he worked a lot of hours, now I've learned to say, I miss you.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of nagging at him, why aren't you home? I'm like, you're not here. I need you. Instead, I say, I miss you. And he smiles.
That's amazing. And I think that one thing that you mentioned was so powerful is, what do I really want? And I think that at the end of the day, you guys, if we really ask ourselves, what do I really want? It's probably not to be right. It's probably that we want that connection. And so when we ask ourselves, what do we really want? And it's acknowledgement that I want the connection, not just to be right, it's going to make my choices on what I say and how I handle the situation much differently. And so I think that that's a really, really powerful thing, Anne. And I'm so grateful that you shared it. Is there anything else that you haven't had a chance to share that you wanted to before we wrap up our conversation?
I just really want to encourage your audience that one can make a difference. I have seen it so many times. Deal with your own heart, your own mindset before you have those conversations with your spouse so that they can come off in a way that can bring you closer together instead of further apart. One can make a difference. When you change the steps of the dance, your husband will have to change the steps to his dance, and that can help you. And reach out for help sooner than later. Don't leave it too long. Like if you've been suffering, because it's suffering when we feel that distance, that space between us, reach out sooner than later, because when we pile pain upon pain, I call it stacking, then there's a lot to go through.
Right.
We had a lot to go through, Lachelle, to get to a better place.
Yeah.
But even in that very first conversation, there was hope. And so I want to encourage your audience that there is hope for better relationships, and to reach out for help if you're in a bad place in order to deal with so that you can have a better marriage.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. And I'm so grateful for you and your time today and all of the wisdom that you've shared through your own journey. So thank you so much. And you guys, I'm going to make sure that we have all of the ways that you can connect with Anne inside the show notes so that if you feel compelled to reach out to her or want to follow her journey, you have all of the tools that you need for that as well. So, Anne, thank you so much for everything and have an amazing day.
Great to see you. Thanks, Michelle. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for listening to the Untucked podcast. I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you. And don't forget to check out the show notes if you want to get into my private club, the Better Club, to be able to learn better ways to be better, do better, and have better. So until next time, keep showing up. Let's get unstuck together. Have a great day.